to the self-paced lesson training for JROTC Cyber instructors. In this training, we will cover the third lesson in Unit 1, Lesson 1.1.2, Authentication. Supplies for note-taking may be helpful during this training session. This can include a pen, pencil, and some paper. There are 5 components in this lesson. The lesson guide and PowerPoint are for you as the instructor. The first activity, Testing Password Strength, is a handout that you can print for your students. It's designed for students to work in pairs. The second activity, Safe Password Poster Instructions, should be available for each student. And now we'll start our lesson on 1.1.2, Authentication. In our previous lesson, we introduced CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the goals of cybersecurity. In order to achieve those goals, our primary tools are AAA. You can put these steps into context by using an exclusive party as an example. Let's start with authentication. Prove who you are. So the methods of proving that you are who you say you are authentication. And using our example of exclusive party, this would be like showing the doorman or screener your ID to prove you are John Smith. Then we move to access control. Just because you are John Smith doesn't mean you get into the party. The screener now has to check to see if you're on the invited list, i.e., are you allowed access? So access control defines what you are allowed to see or get to. It's kind of also known as authorization or permission. But technically, those terms are not exactly the same as access control within the bounds of cybersecurity. For students understanding, though, they'll recognize those terms and they can be used to help define access control. Accounting is the third A. Now, this isn't the financial type of accounting. This is the keeping track kind of accounting. If we want to know which of the invitees has already arrived at the party, we can review the list to see if their name is checked off. In computing, we use log files to keep a record of what has happened on the system. So accounting is like auditing. It's keeping track of what has happened. We're going to start our in-depth learning with the authentication tool. And this is a cute, funny cartoon to get us started on thinking about the simplest type of authentication, which is the password. Most people don't realize that authentication is about trust. In fact, we're developing authentication fatigue because our digital systems are constantly challenging us for passwords and PINs. But as we mentioned before, I can't let you touch the valuable data until I know exactly who you are. So authentication is about proving that I am who I say I am and establishing that trust between two parties. If we can't trust each other, then how can we share information or participate in activities together? You'll want to ask students the question in the box. What are some ways to prove who you are? In other words, what are 3 ways to authenticate? They're likely going to come up with answers like driver's license, passport, fingerprints, maybe their school ID, and of course, passwords. Maybe there's a QR code that could be used for authentication. So let the students talk through that. And then you're going to itemize and define the 3 ways to authenticate. One is something you know. Typically, a password might be a PIN, but something you know, it's knowledge you have that proves that you are who you say you are. You're the only one who knows it. Then, something you have. This is again typically like a PIN that's sent to you when you try and log in, or a smart card. A lot of corporations hand out smart cards that can be used as the authentication. And then the last thing is something you are, like a fingerprint. This is also known as biometric, and we're going to look at a lot more ways of doing biometric authentication. We're going to talk a little bit more about the password version of something you know. That's really the authentication that we rely on the most. And right now, we're just going to define it simply as a combination of characters and numbers. This video is from a movie called Spaceballs. It's a little old, but maybe some of your students have heard about it, and it's a silly little 1-minute clip about how ridiculously people can set up their passwords. Password attacks in attacking what you know. The first method is always going to be to try to steal your password. That's definitely the easiest way to do it. Somebody might look over your shoulder when you're logging in. They might install keylogging software on your computer, and you just would not believe how many people have their password written down someplace. And it's really pretty easy to find. So we're going to look at those a little bit later in our social engineering unit. For real password attacks, we have two ways of guessing the password. Let's start with brute force. That's where the hacker just keeps guessing until it works or until the hacker gives up. Now, a brute force attack is guessing, but not with any knowledge about the person. The guessing is trying every combination of characters. If your 3-letter password uses only the 26 lowercase letters, so let's say that's a possibility, then in that case, there would be just 17,756 possible combinations. And it takes a computer just about 3 seconds to try all of those. You can see this on the screen. We've got this cool website we've created to test the total combinations based on whether you use lowercase or uppercase or numbers or characters, and we can play with it. But there's also going to be an activity at the end where we actually use this tool to help students look at the strength of different types of passwords. We've defined brute force as a software program. There is the old-fashioned way of guessing a password, kind of known as a stupid user, because when a user creates a password based on things that are familiar to them, which is what we do, right? Then it's easy to guess. So those are our weak passwords. They come from things that people would guess about you or even look up about you. And this is an interesting look at how exactly the structure of your password impacts how easy it is or how fast it is to crack. This is how long it takes a hacker to brute force your password. If you look at the first column, there's a number of characters, and let's just look at that. Just how many characters are you using? If you're using only 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters, it's in the instantly category. When you get to 8 characters, if you mix them up, if you're using lowercase letters, uppercase letters, the whole keyboard, we can get you to about 8 hours, but that's still less than a workday. So we've got to get down the column in number of characters. Typically, today's recommendation is to get up to 14 characters and use the entire keyboard, and notice that we get into the years pretty quickly. And this is a good time for us to talk about a really important principle of cybersecurity: to be safe. You want to make yourself more trouble than it's worth to attack. Hackers are only going to put in days or even years into tracking a password if there's a lot of guaranteed payoff at the end. If you don't have anything valuable that they know they can get from you, and they're just going to go and try and find somebody easier. A lot of password attacks are just opportunity attacks. They don't know you. They're just trying to break into whatever accounts they can and make whatever trouble they can, or get whatever profit they can. So your job is to make yourself too much trouble to hack. And one of the ways to do that is to use a unique, secure password. So what is it that makes that password unique? How do hackers approach this concept? Well, one of the things they do in their software or in their logical guessing is they take what they know about human beings. And this is tried and true information. First of all, when humans make a password, we kind of make a word. We want to be able to recognize it or remember it. And that means there's a 50% chance that a vowel was used because it's going to look more like a word to us. If we use capital letters, which we know we're supposed to, we know we're supposed to use uppercase and lowercase, then it's going to be either at the beginning of the end because we've been trained with good spelling, and we're going to do what we're supposed to do. and it's just easier to remember, right? So capital letters generally are used at the beginning, and they're generally followed by a vowel. So again, it's still trying to make it look like a word. And if we do have a number in it, which we're supposed to have, we like the number 1 or 2, or sometimes even your birthday. And that's how humans remember things. There's also a gender difference. Women tend to use personal names in their passwords. Maybe their cat's name, their kid's name, their school's name. Men tend to use their hobbies like sports. And then finally, there's lots of special characters, but we don't use them all. We don't tend to use them at all. Like, who uses the parentheses character? Probably no one, right? But they're all available. It's just that humans have narrowed it down to ones like the @ sign. We can make the @ sign an A. An exclamation point. We could pretend an exclamation point is a 1. And hackers know this. The software they use know this. So we don't have to make it easy for them. We can make our passwords much harder. Now, here's an activity, and it's time to practice. We have an activity called Testing Password Strength that's going to use the website that we just showed you. There are lots of websites like this that students may come across. And that's why cyber.org created this password strength website, so that we would be sure of its security. If students try another password strength website, please warn them not to use a real password. Even on our site, they should not put in their real password. This activity can be more fun if after the students have finished it, they come up to the instructor's computer to put in the passwords that they've tried. They're going to create some easy passwords. They're going to create some very hard passwords, and sharing them together can make for some extra engagement. This brings us to the end of our third lesson. We'll see you next time.